25 days away. Hawkeye fans, bring your comments and questions here for the next 60, and we will discuss what we are most likely to see 25 days from now and throughout the fall for Iowa football right here at the Voice of College Football. And we, of course, get this done each and every week thanks to Corey Bratta. And you can catch Corey's work at From the Hawkeye of the Storm right here on YouTube. Episode number 54, Corey.
Yeah, and we're going to be getting close to 60 by the time the season starts, which is great. I know we've got some TV deal stuff to talk about, which I find fascinating, and some early camp buzz, some of it encouraging, some of it a bit worrisome. I don't know, where do you want to start today, Mark?
Let's start with the encouraging. Can we start with the glass half full on the optimistic side?
Keep in mind, we don't have Iowa Media Day until Friday, so we should maybe get some more information Friday. Personnel-wise, injuries, that kind of thing, we'll probably get more information Friday from coaches, perhaps some players. But, I think the encouraging thing is there's positive buzz from the running back room. I've heard some good things. Now, a lot of this, when I say buzz, a lot of this is just rumors. Again, we're not, it's not like these official reports coming out of here. Oh, so-and-so did this in practice and so-and-so did that. But encouraging stuff around Caleb Johnson, which doesn't surprise me. We talked about him way back when he signed, Mark. He is a big, big running back. Maybe some shades of poor man's Braylon Allen at Wisconsin. Now, Allen was a converted safety, kind of a freak, but I think a guy like Caleb Johnson has a chance to play early because of those physical traits. He's listed, I think, at 215, 220, somewhere in there, around 6'1". Kirk had previously suggested that he's actually closer to 6'2". So that's a positive. Iowa needs downhill runners, and I think they've got a number of them. I'm not saying that that's going to be a strong position group, but you can definitely see some potential there. Sounds like there's been flashes so far. Basically Iowa fans, all Iowa fans have are reports from bloggers and media people on Twitter and rumors on message boards. I've got a couple of connections to people who I would consider to be good resources, but I mean, it's so limited, Mark. Again, we'll get a lot more later in the week. I can tell you that I've heard good things from several people on Caleb Johnson. It seems like the university is, and I'm not trying to say that the guy or the people who are doing the daily photo gallery from fall camp, I'm not saying that those guys are trying to ignite the fan base, but there have been a lot of pictures of Deontay Vines. I can tell you that at wide receiver, which is sort of interesting. They need help at receiver with Charlie Jones and Tyrone Tracy leaving. We know that Jackson Ritter, who played some last year, is out for the season with an injury. So it just seems like the university's not really holding back in the Deontay Vines. It seems like every day he's showing up making a play in these photos. And again, they're just photos. I get it. You do see him running with, I would say, at least the twos, which I would hope that he'd be running with at least twos. That's a very thin room right now. No sign of Keegan Johnson, and that's sort of part of the worrisome part of this. I mean, we've had like 6 photo galleries, 6 days of fall camp, 7, somewhere in there, I think 6. This is day 6, and no sign of Keegan Johnson. We know he dealt with the injury that kept him out of, the game against Kentucky back in January, as well as much of, I think, all of spring practice. That's a worrisome thing. Last I knew, it was an abdominal problem, and so, I mean, if he's not back by now, you do have to wonder what is his status moving forward. It doesn't sound like there's been anything official. I know some of the media spoke with Kirk. I don't know if it was I was told that there was a conversation with Kirk earlier this week by someone. I won't name who I'm talking about, but it doesn't sound like there have been any updates on injuries about anyone. So nothing on Keegan Johnson. Another guy who's not showing up in these pictures so far, Mark, is Davidkov. And he was a 4-star offensive lineman who enrolled early last year. He's on the 2 deep. He ran with the ones a lot during the spring. So that's a bit odd. There have been rumors on message boards that he's going to be transferring. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why he would transfer, but you never know what's going on in a kid's life. I believe he's from Illinois, so he's not real far from home. These are just we're just speculating on these things at this point. But No sign of from at least from what I've seen, and I've tried to peruse these photos and stay up to date. No sign of Keegan Johnson. No sign of Davidkov, and no sign of John Wagner, who's listed as a starter at defensive end. So, I mean, take that as you may. You hope it means nothing, and if guys are dinged up, you hope they can get back. We're less than a week into fall camp, so hopefully we get more information. I would assume we'll know a lot more Friday.
Folks, what is most tangible after a few days of practice, even after a few weeks of practice, whether that be in the spring, but most notably in the fall, because of what's at stake, playing football games very soon, is taking what the coaches and the coordinators and the athletes have to say, and then adding that up to what the information is going into camp, meaning nobody is gathering much from watching these teams play. Even your beat writers, which I have on here on a regular basis for various teams, they get a small look at the team. And most of that is stretching and a few drills, possibly at isolated times during fall camp, maybe 3 or 4 times. And the rest of it, they're basically taking what they know of the team heading into fall camp and then putting that together with the comments made by coaches and players. And then somebody or a few chosen people may have some inside information because they know a few trainers, they know a few people on the inside that they may get threads of information that are meaningful. And the rest of it is basically putting 2 and 2 together as best we can.
And I can tell you this, I can tell you that one thing that was given to me or noted to me from a very reliable source, and I've heard this now a couple different times, but this is a source I do trust on this, is that Caden Wetjen, who looked really good in the spring at wide receiver, specifically with his speed, it sounds like he's working extensively in the return game. Which isn't a huge surprise. He's a JUCO transfer in, and they need help at returner, at punt return and at kick return with Charlie Jones leaving. So that was a guy I was keeping my eye on after spring. So I'm not surprised to see him working, or hear that he's working quite a bit returning kicks and punts. I do think this, Mark. I will say this: being an Iowa fan and having, because I am a fan first, having followed Iowa football and been through this process for years. I can tell you there always seems to be at least a couple of really big surprises during fall camp. Like it might just be personnel. It might be an injury. You hope it's not, or a couple of injuries. Right now, the last thing Iowa needs is a major injury to a wide receiver, and especially your top 3. So if I'm Iowa, if I'm an Iowa fan, Davidkov, we'll see what happens there. We'll see what happens with the punt return and kick return. Keegan Johnson has to be healthy. Like that's the biggest concern if I'm an Iowa fan right now, because he goes down. You got Arlen Bruce, Nico Regani, and then nothing as far as proven experience. Again, the only other guy that's on the roster that has proven experience is Jackson Ritter, and he's out for the season. And remember, you lose all those people, all those apologists who defended Iowa. For some reason, they feel the need to defend Iowa when guys like Charlie Jones up and leave. He wasn't going to play anyways. Well, we're going to see the results. People who are saying that
Jones?
Still, yeah, well, on offense, they think. Don't listen to it, Mark. It's just ridiculous. I hear this all the time. Still, Iowa fans who, anytime a guy leaves, and you probably get this out of other fan bases, he wasn't going to. It's addition by subtraction. He wasn't going to play anyways. He must have slipped down the depth chart. That's a load of malarkey as it relates to Charlie Jones. The kid was going to play, and all I can say now is, we've talked about it, but health between Charlie Jones, Arlen Bruce, and Nico Regani is of utmost importance. And if you lose Keegan Johnson for any stretch of time, I mean, who's your number one guy at that point? Who's lining up at? I mean, I don't know. First of all, you've got Nico Regani, who had I thought a really down year last year. You'd expect him to step up as a senior, but he's limited athletically. He's not going to be a below the top off the defense type of receiver. You hope Arlen Bruce can be that. I've compared him to a poor man's Rondell Moore, but he's got a lot to prove in order to fulfill that potential. And then you have to hope somebody who's on this roster. Is it Deontay Vines, who we keep seeing pop up in these photos? Is it a Brody Brecht, who, by the way, is another guy that I have not seen one photo of entire spring practice? So I see people on Twitter on a daily asking about Brecht. I have no idea. And if Brecht, he's been, he, of course, was bothered by a hamstring during baseball. If he's not 100% by now, then there's another issue. So right now, as far as healthy scholarship wide receivers that I can confirm that I know are competing in spring practice, you've got Vines, you've got Bruce, and you've got Regani. And then I'm assuming Bostic's in there, and maybe I've missed Jacob Bostic, who's a freshman. I've heard good things about his flashes early. But who else is who else is going to step up? Is it Alec Wick, who's a walk-on from Regina? Is it, mentioned Wetjen earlier? That is a thin position, Mark. And I've been concerned about wide receiver even before Charlie Jones left and before Jackson Ritter got hurt and before we started to see a lack of Keegan Johnson in these photos. So that's continued concern.
Sounds like Kirk Ferentz has a built-in excuse not to go to 4 wides and throw the ball downfield.
Well, I will say this: Iowa does typically play 4 to 5 receivers a game in some capacity. So you're going to need the bodies, regardless of. Now, I think what you just said is a very valid point. Could we see more 3 tight end sets? You've got Steven Solianos coming in from Lafayette. Where is his progression at right now? I believe he has been pictured in fall camp, which is a good sign, as have Luke Lachey and Sam Laporta. So it sounds like the tight end room is at full strength. Saw Addison Estringa, freshman tight end, pictured today. So the tight ends are going to be, once again, probably the focal point of that offense. And there have been media people that have been hyping it for a while now. And I think a bit of it is overboard. I think it's, people, I've heard a couple of specific media members that have compared or projected that this could be a Fant Hawkinson type of year from these tight ends. What has Luke Lachey? I hope it is, Mark, but what has Luke Lachey proven? And yeah, I get it. TJ Hawkinson hadn't really proven much before 2017 either. I get that. He hadn't proven anything. But we're just so focused on latching on to the next great thing and just holding on to this hope. There's a lot to prove in the passing game. And Sam Laporta is great. His health right now, Mark, he might be I think he is. I think he's the most important. I haven't talked about this on my channel. He's probably the most important player on the offense, which is weird to say. But I don't think it's quarterback right now because I think they've got 2 guys who are about the same in Padilla and Petrus. I've got my own opinions about that battle. I don't think it's running back, even though that's not a real deep group. And right now, wide receiver, who are you going to pinpoint? I think it's Laporta right now because he was not only their leading receiver last year, he certainly, I think in my mind, is expected to be Iowa's leading receiver this year. So hopefully he can stay healthy. He has been an example of health throughout his time here, and they're going to need him a lot. So yeah, maybe we get more 3 tight end sets this year. We haven't seen as much of that in the recent years.
Super chat contribution coming in from Mark Bowman. Mark, we appreciate your support. Was Caleb Johnson recruited by Ohio State? He was recruited by Ohio State, went to some Ohio State football camps. However, I've looked at 4 different sources, and Caleb Johnson's offers included at the top end Michigan, Michigan State, Pitt, Minnesota, Kentucky, but no Ohio State offers for Caleb Johnson, 15th rated player in the state of Ohio, top 35 running back.
Did you know that off the top of your mind? Did you know he wasn't offered?
No, I did not know that. I don't keep up with recruiting.
Wow. I know, but you rattled off that stuff about, attending Ohio State camps and whatnot. No, Ohio State was involved. The answer to the question.
I knew that. Yes.
Yeah. The answer to Mark's question in short, like you just said, was yes, he was recruited by Ohio State, but no, I don't think he ever officially was offered. But
no,
he is a guy who kind of flew under the radar, and at his size, I'm a bit surprised by that. Jazzian Patterson looks the part as well. And you know what, Mark, I've been high on both those kids coming in as freshmen.
Ohio is a strong high school football state, but it's not what it was 25 years ago, but it's still a top 7 to 9 high school football playing state. But when you get past the top 7, 8, 9 players in the state of Ohio State's interest drops off considerably. So if you're in that top 10 to 15, you may not get offered within the state of Ohio by Ohio State. Right, folks, we as Americans, we're crazy about our football, But you know what? We love our country even more. The past 2 or 3 years have taken a toll on all of us. Economic difficulties have been especially hard in the last year. So please remember those families in need. We got to support each other. The fine folks at Jean Arthur Associates are doing their part. Now, when you partner with Jean Arthur Associates, you give back to those families in need, and most importantly, those children who need it most. 23 families are currently waiting for your support. Go to www.jaainsurance.com. It's down in the description section of this live stream. That's www.jaainsurance.com. You get your instant quote on home, auto, motorcycle, boat, RV, renter's insurance, business owner policies, commercial package policies, workers' comp, inland marine equipment, life, health, dental, crime, cyber bonds. It's all covered. Contact Jean Arthur Associates. They do it all.
Mark, can we get to the second super chat here from Lomansky? He said he wants me to step it up. He's taking a shot at me, Mark. Lomansky is ripping me. He says, step up your game with Mr. Mark. Very vibrant, high IQ debate recently with USC Tim. Thanks for the offseason. He's ripping me, isn't he, Mark?
That is a tongue-in-cheek statement. Okay. I have no doubt.
I'm okay with I've been ripped plenty of times, and I'll continue to get ripped. But I'll have to go back and listen to this. By the way, your stuff with the USC guy's great. I'll just say that because I have listened to that extensively. He does a good job.
So the USC guy that we have on as our main contributor is Matt Zemek.
Matt, yep.
Trojans Wire. Lemansky is speaking of Tim, a frequent USC caller, great contributor to the show.
I see.
He calls in on a regular basis. We did a Pac-12 preview the other night. We did a Big 12 preview yesterday, and Tim called in both times and was quite heated. He and the real MVP had quite the battle.
I can't imagine the real MVP getting into it with anyone.
Oh, because the real MVP is down on the Pac-12, and Tim came to the defense of the Pac-12. We had quite the debate. And then concerning the circumstances at Oklahoma yesterday, Tim and I got into it a bit. So that was what transpired over the last few days. A vibrant, high-Q debate. Yes.
Mark, I will say this. I had somebody reach out to me who listens to the show every week. He wanted us just briefly to address the Notre Dame discussion that you and I had via telephone the other night on the air. And I listen, when I called in the other night, it was not with the intent to start ripping Notre Dame. I have nothing against Notre Dame. We were talking about dark horses, and we were talking about the playoff and scenarios, and we started to talk about previous playoffs, specifically last year. Notre Dame was 11-1 heading into championship week. Of course, they don't play a championship because they're not part of a conference. And I thought you and I had I listened back to that conversation. I thought we explained our purpose. I mean, again, you and I didn't have some big purpose in that phone call, that conversation, but I thought we got our point across. I just feel like Notre Dame not joining a conference, as you explained well, it's not on them. It's on the rest of these conferences to basically shut them out. And if the playoff committee is going to continue to allow them to not play in a championship game or not punish them more for not playing in a championship game, then you're never going to force them into a conference. I think if you're the Big Ten Conference and I'm the playoff committee, I'm a member of the playoff committee, whether I'm Gary Barta, whoever is serving that year, I'm doing everything I can to keep, or at least to punish Notre Dame for not playing that 13th game.
If I'm the Big Ten Conference, I don't play Notre Dame anymore.
Yeah.
And will the Big Ten suffer financially for that? Suffer is a strong word. Will it not make nearly as much money? Yes. It will not make, instead of, and I'm just throwing out numbers, $400 million next year, it'll make $392 million. It doesn't matter significantly. Yes, Notre Dame brings eyeballs to the ratings, to the TV sets, and it also fills stadiums. However, the Big Ten is the Big Ten. The Big Ten does not need Notre Dame. The Big Ten wants Notre Dame. Let's be clear about that. They're pursuing Notre Dame as a valuable football commodity and a fine institution. It would be a great, tremendous addition to the conference, but is not needed. So we have a landscape of college football where we currently sit with now BYU being the last of the independents, other than Notre Dame, the major independents, joining a conference. Everyone's in a conference except Notre Dame. Makes no sense. Should not be tolerated.
And I had people ripping me for not calling out BYU. In case anybody didn't know this, like if anybody's been living under a rock for the last year, BYU's joining a conference. Mark, did you know that? Did you know they're joining a
I heard
conference
that.
next year? Yeah,
I may think to do a video on that possibly.
So yeah. So again, it had nothing. I've got no vendetta against Notre Dame, but it's the same for anybody who wishes to remain independent, especially with the current. I just can't. I cannot believe with the current landscape of college football that Notre Dame has been allowed to continue. That just is it's crazy to me.
Notre Dame would not be allowed to continue, I believe, if we had a governing body overseeing college football or a commissioner. But you have every conference acting autonomously, so they would have to cooperate to do what you're asking it to do.
Right. And I don't see how them staying independent helps either the SEC or the Big Ten. I think it probably helps it. If you're either one of those conferences, you're probably the SEC trying to keep them independent, because I think there's a greater chance they stay independent than join the SEC anytime soon. Is that fair?
Yes.
So anyways, that's the Notre Dame. I don't want to rant about that and spend this entire hour discussing Notre Dame. For anybody who's wondering, and I'll say it, Mark, because I'm kind of disappointed by it. I reached out to a lot of resources to try to schedule somebody in the Wisconsin media for this show, because that's where we're at in our scheduled preview segments, is to Wisconsin. We've got 3 games left to finish this month, and I got not a word back from anyone. I did get a response from one individual who is no longer working covering Wisconsin football, but I reached out to, at least a half a dozen or more, including I reached out to the Wisconsin athletic department, and that was last week, and it's been crickets, nothing. So, we've talked about that in the past, Mark. I'm always rubbed the wrong way when people don't respond to legitimate phone calls. Like when it's your job as, you're working in athletics communications, it'd be nice if you could return a phone call or an email. And so a bit frustrating by that. But just so we made attempts. You and I both made attempts to get someone scheduled from Wisconsin, and I guess we'll continue to work on that. But it is what it is at this point. That's why we've taken this 2-week hiatus.
I think there's a reason why I have more of a tolerance for it than you do, because you work in a business on the news side. So Corey works on the news side, that you have to talk to people. There are situations in which, to get the complete story and to be accurate, you need to talk to people. And so that's your mindset. Mine's kind of like, I'm going to be here talking college football, and if somebody wants to join me, fine. If they don't, I could care less.
Well, and it's not like we're asking for a whole hour. We just need somebody for 10, 15 minutes. So we'll keep working at it. Maybe we can get somebody in the athletic department. I'll keep, I always have been taught that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I found that to be true. And so keep squeaking away, and eventually somebody will grease you up. Don't take that the wrong way. Don't read into that, but eventually it'll work out in your favor. Let's talk about this TV contract. I know you got the super chat, Mark, but I know we don't talk about the TV contract stuff as well.
Erica, thank you so much. We appreciate your contribution and you being here every week. And everyone that joins us on a weekly basis, guess what? We could triple, quadruple the audience here for the live shows if you would go out and let people know that we're here every Tuesday at 4:30 Central Time. Do that the old-fashioned way. Pick up the phone, text someone. I guess that's an old-fashioned way now. Text to someone, or you can go out on social media and drop the link. So Erica says, hey, team, please gently press the like button. Thanks. Go Hawks.
Appreciate that, Erica. Good reminder for everybody. And yes, Lemansky, thank you for I see another super chat here from Lemansky, Mark. Appreciate this compliment. I don't know if that I live up to that, but no need to explain yourself. I get the tongue-in-cheek comment earlier. So, but yes, particularly if any Buckeyes or Badgers are near. I don't have any. I typically don't really. I know a lot of Iowa fans really dislike Wisconsin. I typically don't have any vendetta against Wisconsin at all. We've talked about this, and we'll probably discuss it on future shows. We're kind of chirping about it before the show went live, but fan bases that get on your nerves. Have you done much? Have you produced much content about fan bases that get on your nerves? That would be something I think really like. That's kind of what is that more like a big game boomer type of?
Yes.
type of,
I would be happy to host a live stream or a show and have other people comment. That would be great. Let's do that.
Maybe we shouldn't wait to the end of the season for that, Mark, because I can't imagine.
Yes.
Your call-in show. Can you imagine having?
That's a good one. Yeah,
that's a real good one, and I'm sure
whether that's the most annoying fan base, the most delusional fan base, the most ignorant fan base, the most arrogant fan base. I saw one of the lists had Ohio State as the most, I believe, annoying fan base.
See, I maybe I'm detached from that. I don't care. I don't care about Ohio State fans. I've never had a single bad interaction with an Ohio State fan. I've got a friend who's an Ohio State fan who lives here in Ames. I don't have any. Now, Michigan, that's a different discussion. But I think it's a great call-in show topic, Mark.
Yeah, that will be fun because see, I tend to take a neutral stance where I say anytime I hear a tag given to a fan base, they're the most delusional, they're the most annoying, they're the most this, they're the most that. I think there is a portion of every fan base that's delusional, that's ignorant, that's knowledgeable, that's classy, that's classless. All those things.
Yeah.
A certain part of every fan base.
T Hawkeye in the chat brings up Penn State. Penn State would make my top 3 for just, I shouldn't even say, because you don't want to stereotype a large group of people. But as far as interactions I've had, Penn State would definitely make my top 5, maybe even my top 3. I've been to Minnesota road games, and I went to an Iowa-Minnesota basketball game a couple years back on the road, and I'll tell you, Minnesota fans hate a lot of the student section. They hate Iowa people. At least they hate the team. It's incredible, and I know that rivalry has long history. But those 22-year-olds, 20-year-olds don't know anything about the Floyd-Rosedale history. But there's some vitriol between Iowa and Minnesota fans. Again, I have not had it. I know there's some Iowa fans really view Illinois fans as being really annoying. I know on the basketball front there has been some barking between the coaches of each team. So that's a great topic for another day. I see the real Hayden going to rip your fan base for a second here, Mark. He says, Corey's obviously, I've never been to a game at the Shoe, but maybe that would enlighten me to the Ohio State way. Do you recognize the Ohio State fan base is possibly being, I don't know if he's referring to arrogance or just being annoying?
That would be the term that I would put on Ohio State fans, if anything. Anything, then I think it would, and I think that goes to any team that is dominant and has a history. Sure, Alabama fans are arrogant. More, you would think that there would be more arrogant Alabama fans than arrogant Purdue fans.
Sure. And I think, listen, right now, there's as much of a rivalry between Iowa and Purdue as any other team in the conference for the Hawks as far as what's going on the field, because Purdue's actually kind of dominated the series as of late. So there's some vitriol between. I mean, there's some good rivalries that are underrated. We've talked about the Iowa-Penn State rivalry that they don't get to play this year.
Did you hear the comment that Rich Eisen made a few weeks ago that I went crazy about on Twitter?
Probably. Remind me, because he's made some outlandish. Oh, hold on. Don't tell me. He made a, because I went back and watched it after you tweeted about it. Rich Eisen made a comment about how there are no worthwhile rivalries that don't, in the Big Ten, that don't involve Michigan. So in other words, he's basically saying the Iowa-Minnesota rivalry means nothing. The Minnesota-Wisconsin rivalry means nothing. Ohio State-Michigan State means nothing. Ohio State-Penn State means nothing. Indiana-Purdue means nothing. You know, at some point, I don't know what his, I mean, I get he's a Michigan fan. I'm guessing he's just trying to follow the Colin Cowherd way and just trying to produce clicks. Because I've had respect for Rich Eisen, but
sure,
that was out of left field.
Yeah, and I'm sure that his response had nothing to do with my reply, but I ripped him pretty good, and I got the word out there as much as I possibly could that this is ridiculous, this is ignorant, whatever else I called it. But he took the tweet down.
Really? Did he really? Well, he
Yes,
took
he
the
did.
tweet down, but he still said it on his show.
Well, he can't take that back, but
Right.
he had tweeted about it, and he took the tweet down.
Interesting. Well, look at the power. I think that's you, Mark. That's Mark Rogers. That's
Well,
the
I
voice
went
of
on
college
a rampage.
football. Did you get some response on it?
From him?
No, from other people. Were there
Oh,
other
absolutely, I did.
people interacting with your tweet? Good.
Sure.
No, I mean, I get, to some extent, I get, he's probably looking at it through the lens of specifically Michigan, Ohio State. I mean, like, there's probably not a rivalry in the country that you would even put semi-close. I mean, Alabama, Auburn, is that the closest that you have, or is it USC, UCLA? I mean, that's not even that. USC, UCLA has no claim to anything close to what Michigan, Ohio State is. I think Auburn, Alabama may be the closest.
Probably from a popularity standpoint.
So yeah, I get, maybe I if he's taking it from that approach, I understand to some extent. But yeah,
but that's completely discounting what college football is all about.
Of course.
In terms of that, that's just basically saying if you're not a top program, then forget you. And he's usually not like that. So I think it was just a short-sighted comment.
Well, and that also, though, that feeds into the narrative of the Michigan fans are stuck up, elitist. That sort of a narrative. That, I'm not saying it's true or not true, but when you have alumni like Rich Eisen making those comments, then that's what you get. Army, Navy, yeah, that's a
for me, for the record, that is in a completely different category.
It is in a different category, but is it the longest standing rivalry in the history of college football?
No.
When was the first Army Navy game played?
I can't answer that question. I know Lehigh and Lafayette is the longest standing college football game. Now, that's obviously not a major college football game. The most played, I believe, is Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Yeah. See, again, that's a perfect example of not even looking at it from an Iowa perspective, but that's such an outlandish comment to make. And I also think that might just be trying to eat away at Ohio State fans. I'm not saying that he accomplished his purpose, but like, that's, again, Ohio State is, I mean, I don't know where you'd rank Ohio State, Michigan State, or Ohio State, Penn State, because I don't really know the history of those two rivalries as well as you do.
Not high.
I mean, I think it's fair to say Michigan has more important rivalries than Ohio State does collectively. Is that true?
Sure, they do. But see, Ohio State, and I understand your interpretation of what he said, and we'll move on with Iowa, of course, here in a second. I understand your interpretation of what he said may have been a slam against Ohio State. I don't think Ohio State fans would take it that way. I think Ohio State fans would take it as, we have one rival. We don't consider anybody else a rival. That's it. Michigan State and Penn State have become rivals to an extent just because of the importance of the games. When you have two programs that are fighting for a championship fairly consistently, then you have the makings of a rivalry.
So, Mike, okay, here's my question, and then we can move on to more specific stuff on Iowa. Is there another program in the Big Ten, in your eyes, because you're a Big Ten guy, is there another program in the Big Ten that has as many rivals as Iowa does? Like, I mean, I think anybody who follows Iowa football and knows the history of Iowa football would call Iowa, Minnesota a big rivalry. Obviously the Iowa, Wisconsin, that's a rivalry. There's no question about it. That's a rivalry. And Iowa, Nebraska was sort of, when they joined the Big Ten, it was sort of forced, but it does come natural, and there is some history there. That's three rivalries right there. And, which is kind of odd that Illinois is not in that boat, given the fact that they're so close to Iowa City. But I mean, are there other Big Ten teams that have that many significant rivalries? I say
Michigan.
Significant, again, genuine rivalries.
Michigan's
got Michigan State, Ohio State, and who am I missing?
Actually, you may discard this, but Minnesota. Michigan, Minnesota.
And what do they play for?
They play for. I always get this mixed up with Minnesota, Wisconsin. Which one's
Yeah.
Paul Bunyan's Axe?
I believe that's Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Yeah. So they play for the Brown Jug,
The Brown
Minnesota,
Jug.
Michigan.
And the old Oaken Bucket is Indiana, Purdue.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Like, so I get, but again, that's overlooking, like, I wouldn't call the Michigan-Minnesota rivalry any more significant than the Iowa-Wisconsin rivalry.
Oh, it's now less because they play in different divisions and they
Right.
don't play all the time.
Exactly.
Minnesota's got 3 rivals, I would say.
And I mean, again, like I said earlier, you could call Iowa-Penn State a rivalry, because that series has been so entertaining. Mark, it's been entertaining since Kirk Ferentz took over here. No,
That's an entertaining series. That's not a rivalry.
Well, I don't know.
Iowa and Penn State are not a rival.
So what classifies? You got to have a big brown jug. What classifies a rivalry?
No.
What classifies a rivalry?
Two fan bases that have some type of sentiment against each other, and 2 teams that are competitive for a championship or competitive for bragging rights of something, whether that's territory or a championship. I just don't see the connection between Iowa and Penn State just because they play competitive games.
So you're saying Purdue, Iowa cannot become a rivalry because they're not?
Sure.
Because they're in the Western
Division.
The
same division, so they're playing for, and they play every year.
Well, but again, the division. Okay, so you're basically saying that the divisions, how the conference decides to make up divisions, that basically determines
to do with it.
What are right, because just because Penn State, I mean, they happen to fall in the other division. They didn't used to be in another division. We used to not have divisions.
I don't consider Iowa and Penn State a rivalry.
Oh,
you obviously have a loose interpretation of rivals.
Sure, I guess I do, because we don't have, and I'll tell you why. Because Iowa fans don't have a Michigan, Ohio State. Now we do have Iowa State. That's another one. That's number 4, Mark.
Yeah,
that's 4, and so you admit that's 4 legit rivalries. I don't know if there's a program in the Big Ten. I don't think there is another program in the Big Ten. Nebraska, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa State.
Legit.
Those are 4
State,
and they're all okay, fine, but all those are all trophy games. I don't know that any other. I'd like to do my research on that. I'd love to know if any other program has 4 trophy games.
Ohio State and Illinois play for a trophy, but
do they really?
That a rivalry.
Are you serious?
The Illabuck.
What is it called?
It's a turtle. The Illabuck.
Okay.
It goes back to like the 20s or 30s.
You're helping Rich Eisen's case by bringing up that trophy, Mark. Wow. Now, there were some good. See, how long ago was the Juice Williams game?
07.
07. So that was probably the last time that game has even been competitive, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but again, I don't know how that's a rivalry. I mean, they may have some history there, but they don't play in the same division. Then they're not competitive. I mean, honestly, the Michigan Ohio State game for a while, as great as that's one that it will always be a rivalry, even when it becomes non-competitive, because for a while that wasn't real competitive.
Well, neighboring states or within one state helps.
Right.
If Iowa beat Iowa State 20 years in a row, it would still be a rivalry.
Well, they're almost halfway there, Mark.
Let's get Levi. Where is he when we need him?
Yeah, where is he when we need him?
All right. Folks, we will talk about whatever you want to talk about, but we did have 2 items to get to. Iowa was left just on the outside of the coaches poll preseason at number 26 with 248 votes to Penn State's 240. They were the 2 Big Ten teams just outside the poll. Your thoughts about the preseason polls?
We talked about this before we went on the air as well. So you put that poll up on the channel, and I actually voted in that poll, and I had to pause. And the question, I want to make sure I word this question that you posed to our listeners correctly. You basically said, should Iowa have been ranked in the top 25, correct?
Yes.
So that's completely subjective. I haven't examined the poll 1 through 25, as I will at some point before the season. But again, I don't really care, because there's their question. Thank you. Should Iowa be ranked in the coaches' preseason poll? So I would almost vote twice on this. I'd vote yes, but I'd also vote it doesn't matter. I do think Iowa likely it will end up as a top 25 team. I haven't made my final record prediction, but yeah, probably. But is 26 real? I mean, I don't think it's like some huge disrespect. I do. I do believe that it doesn't matter. And if you're an Iowa fan, you should want them to not be ranked, because Iowa, you don't want Iowa playing with pressure. You want Iowa playing as the underdog. It's kind of like the Michigan State way. That's the Northwestern way. It's the Iowa way. I think Iowa playing with house money, as they will be heading into the season, they can use this as a disrespect card. Mark, let's just be happy that Iowa, if you're an Iowa fan, let's just be happy that Iowa finished in 26th, not 25th. Probably just a difference of a few points, but from a perspective, from a just a narrative standpoint with people, I think it if anything, it helps. And so I'm pleased that they're outside of the top 25. If anything, I believe it helps.
I probably should not have included the option it doesn't matter, because anybody who thinks like I think believes it doesn't matter, and they haven't played a game yet. So,
but it does. But Mark, it does. I shouldn't say it completely doesn't matter, because I think you would agree it does do something for some programs. It does put a target on programs' backs. Like if the rankings weren't here, certain programs would not have that target. If you have a little number next to your name, you are a target. If you're 25th, you're a target. If you're 26th, you're not. That's just how it works. Because there is no little 26th next to. Am I making too much out of that?
Well, in reality, you're right. In what should be, you would not be right, because we would all be objective to say the distance between 25 and 26 is the same as 24 and 25.
Right. But the way the polls are set up, which is all sparked by the media and how, things have been run forever, there is a difference. And that's why I think it's better to start at 25 or 26. But at the same time, Mark, if Iowa wins week 1 and does so in routine fashion, is it fair to say that the chances are they probably end up in the top 25 heading into week 2?
What's funny about that is that Iowa needs to win week 1, of course, will be an overwhelming favorite in week 1. So what had they done at that point? Let's say they win the game 31-14. Not an overly impressive win, but they get the job done. They do what they're supposed to do. What have they accomplished that should now make them a ranked team?
I'm just saying
previous week.
Right. Correct. I'm just saying, based upon the previous week's rankings, there will be probably a team or two that loses. Right? I mean, like that's another problem with the rankings. We talk about this every year, and you're going to be doing the top 25 that actually makes sense, correct?
Absolutely.
It's such a ridiculous thing that happens. It's such, like, for instance,
let me give you an example. Videos.
I'll give you an example, Mark. Where is Penn State in the ranking? Do you know?
27.
Penn State is 27? Okay, I sit corrected. But you give me an example of a team that's in the top 25, or maybe in the top 10. I guarantee you there's not a team in the top 10. I guarantee you this. There's not a team in the top 10 that has any chance of being unranked week 2. Now, explain that to me. That makes no sense, but I believe that that's almost 100% correct. Like, I don't know the matchups in week 1, but I'd go on a limb and say that if, give me a top 10 team right now. Michigan, where's Michigan ranked?
6.
And who do they play week 1?
Colorado State.
If they lose to Colorado State, they'll still be ranked. Mark my words on that. They will still be ranked, and that's what's wrong with the polls. The fact that we're so it's based on absolutely nothing. They can be 0-1 having lost to a non-Power 5 team and still be ranked week 2.
You're probably right.
They ain't falling down. Mark, probably. They ain't falling no 20 spots. That's how the poll works. That's why your poll is, I'm giving you credit, because your poll is not based off of some preseason junk or perception or system that we have in place for ranking these teams on a week-to-week basis. It should be every week, and I attempted, you may have caught some of it, I attempted to make a top 25 that actually makes sense for college basketball the latter half of last season. I think I did okay. I didn't get a ton of I did not get the response you got being the voice of college football, but I did attempt to do that, and I attempted to follow that same criteria because you and I are on the same page on this. You should evaluate if you're going to make rankings, create rankings every week, then resume should be reevaluated every single week. And that takes a lot of work. Do you think that whether we're talking about the coaches poll, which involve coaches that aren't watching all these games, or the AP poll with media members that aren't watching all these games, do you think they're taking a ton of time to, see why there was, it was a 31-14 score between number 25 and unranked Toledo? There may have been 2 touchdowns on 2 pick sixes late. The game may have been close, but won by 17. We're going to move them up 6 slots. It's not based on anything. And yet we still tune in every single Monday in college basketball. Well, they come out Sundays in football. Mm-hmm. We still tune in every week to look at these polls. That's just how it works.
And what's going to drive some people crazy that are either Michigan fans or they are not familiar with my system is Michigan, even winning that first game of the season against Colorado State, will most likely not even be in my top 25 the first week, because I will not rate that as one of the 25 best wins in the country.
And
so they won't even be in the top 25.
Perfect. That's the way it should be. Iowa should not be in the top 25 after week 1. And honestly, Mark, I think it's fair to say they shouldn't be in the top. They shouldn't have. This is going to make some people upset. You could argue that they probably shouldn't have a chance to be top 25 until at least October. Because I guarantee you that there will be 20 by the time we hit the first week of October, there will be at least 25 other teams that have no other losses and at least one win that's better than Iowa State at home. And maybe people don't realize what but that's just how the rankings, the polls work. I think it's unfortunate, but people love it. They lap it up.
And Michigan fans understand that before you get mad at me for that, and Michigan may not see the top 25 in my rankings for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks because they play no one, is that when Ohio State lost to Oregon last year, and to Corey's point, they dropped to like 9th in the country. They lost to Oregon and they dropped from like 3 to 9. And they were even ahead of Oregon still.
And correct me if I'm wrong, did they struggle in week 3? Did Ohio State struggle with
they barely beat Tulsa.
Yeah, I mean, they shouldn't have been ranked going into week 4.
Yeah. So I had them 23, 24, somewhere in that range.
Now, they did win at Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
That was a good win.
Well, it turned out to be a good win. That's another thing that needs to be done in these rankings is you need to reevaluate every week, because Minnesota coming off a 2-5 season. What was the record? Something in that range, 3-5 season the year before.
True. You're right. So at the time,
you don't know how good they are in week 1.
Right.
But then that becomes a better and better win for Ohio State as the season progresses and Minnesota's headed toward 8-4.
Is it fair to say that those who are ranking teams, there's no reason to look at returning production, at recruiting, none of that? None of that should matter, correct? This is not the college football. This should not be the college football playoff selection committee, which is based upon who the committee believes is one of the top 4 teams. This should be based on resume, just like the playoff should be. We know it's not, but it should be.
Well, then there should not be a poll until there's at least one game played. There shouldn't be a preseason poll.
Can we agree that there shouldn't be?
Well, there shouldn't be, but people like it and it's fun. So I had the question posed to me just a couple of nights ago. Mark, are you going to have a preseason top 25 that actually makes sense? And I explained to them those 2 terms can't coincide. That's an oxymoron because it can't make sense until somebody plays a game to be evaluated. I can give you a preseason top 25, and I probably will. That'll just be based on my opinion.
Yeah, based upon I'm sure it'd be much more thorough. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that it'd be a lot more thorough than what we see out of the coaches poll. I've never understood the coaches poll anyways. What is the point of the coaches poll with these coaches who, what do they care? Most of these coaches don't care, Mark. Are they really taking it seriously? And by the way, what was it? The Cleveland.com poll? Here's Ohio representing. What was it? The Cleveland.com preseason stuff that's been around for decades, right? That somebody voted Iowa as finishing 7th in the West. Did you see this? There was one vote that Iowa would finish 7th in the West. So in other words, I try not to be some sloppy homer, but in other words, one of those writers just said, I don't care. I don't care about my job. I don't care about integrity. It doesn't matter. Because nobody in there.
Problem with that.
You don't have a problem with what?
With voting Iowa 7th in the West.
You don't have a problem with that.
Are we talking about, we're talking about a preseason poll?
Yeah.
Correct?
You believe that there's an argument that could be made that Iowa will finish 7th in the Western Division. You believe that's an actual legitimate argument?
I would not have an issue with somebody voting that Rutgers is going to win the Big Ten East. They can vote whatever they want before anybody's played a game.
Okay. We're projecting, though, Mark. Now we're talking about projections. I understand the premise of your polls, which are better than the premise of every other poll out there, is based upon resume. And yes, I know that nobody has resumes, but we're talking, these are predictions. These are Big Ten Division predictions. Nobody in their right mind on this earth is going to project Rutgers as winning the Big Ten East. And I guarantee you nobody did. Nobody.
Okay, so let's go back to Iowa in the West. Could Iowa finish behind Minnesota?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Could they finish behind Wisconsin?
Yes.
Could they finish behind Nebraska?
Yes.
Okay. Could they finish behind Purdue?
Yes.
So we're at 5th place.
No. Go ahead. Keep going with. Yeah.
Could they finish behind Illinois? Is it possible that Iowa?
It is possible that they. I can't see a scenario. Yes, I guess it is possible. It is possible.
And then lastly, you've got a team under whom you believe to be the best coach in the conference that has won the division twice in the last 4 years.
What I'm saying is ain't gonna finish under all of them. They could finish under almost anyone. I don't see how they could, like Illinois, as great as much as I like Brett Bielema, I think I think he'll get it done there. Talent-wise, they were depleted this offseason. They lost a ton of transfers. They're bringing guys in. They're still very much in rebuild mode. But I just don't believe there's any way you could argue that they're going to. We're talking about an actual prediction, Mark. We're not talking about odds. We're not talking about odds for people to bet on in Vegas. We're talking about somebody actually predicted that. They believe that is what's going to happen. I just think it's a bit ridiculous. But again, the point is none of these matter.
I didn't expect Michigan State to go 3-9 coming off a Big Ten championship and a college football playoff appearance, but that's what happened. They went 1-8 in the Big Ten the next year, 3-9, and finished in last place. Had somebody predicted that, they would have gotten slammed.
So somebody's in. Can I bring up a chat here, Mark?
You can bring up a chat, and then we need to get to our sponsor.
Okay, I want you to. Can you read this for us? I want you to read it, Mark.
Mark has an anti-Iowa bias. He rates Kirk Ferentz below Matt Campbell, even though Iowa is better every year and has beaten Campbell every single year.
Did you rank Campbell ahead of Ferentz?
I couldn't even tell you off the top of my head. I bet it was pretty close. Let's see if I still have those rankings. I don't want to have to look at the video itself.
In your defense, first of all, I know you don't have an anti-Iowa bias, but in your defense, Mark,
I actually like Iowa.
I
am actually not even neutral on Iowa, and I attempt to be neutral on everyone. Iowa has not played a bowl game in its history that I've not rooted for Iowa to win.
Why is that?
Because they play in the Big Ten.
Okay, so you could say the same thing about every Big Ten team, but maybe Michigan.
There's been a few exceptions with Michigan, but yeah, I even root for Michigan.
Well, so do I. But I guess what I'm saying is, in your defense, I think it's fair to say that ranking coaches should not purely be based upon head-to-head. Like, I understand what the user here is saying, that Campbell has never beaten Ferentz, and that should be a portion of it. Absolutely, that should be part of the criteria. However, there is more to weigh than just that one game every year. And I've argued that from the other side of it with Levi Stevenson. I've argued the same thing, that I think people we assume, it's not the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. It's not for either team, either program. It's not priority number 1, 2, or 3. I don't think. Certainly not for Iowa.
Matt Campbell is winning at a school that no one has ever won at.
Well, no, that's not true. That's not totally true. That's not totally true.
It is true.
Well, no, Dan McCarney won a little bit for a short period of time. It wasn't sustained, but you're saying Dan McCartney didn't win games at Iowa State?
He won some games, but he's not doing what Matt Campbell's doing.
True. What was
So I ranked Matt Campbell 20th and Kirk Ferentz 29th.
Okay. I think you've got Campbell a bit high, but I didn't have any problems when you first came out with those rankings. Let me find the record. I'm just curious real quick.
While you're looking that up,
Dan McCarney went 9-3 in 2000, Mark. You know that.
I do know that.
He went 9
sustained winning.
Oh, he went 7-5 in 01.
Let's see here.
He went 7-5 in 2004. 7-5 in 2005.
Games under 500. He went 27-68.
Okay.
He went 27-68 in conference.
Okay. He was, first of all, he was taking over a dumpster fire.
Sure. Okay.
A dumpster fire.
He got it to a certain level, and he let it crash again.
No, he didn't. Listen, they went 3-8 in 95, 2-9 in 96, 1-10 in 97. Then they started building things going into 98, 3-8, 4-7, 9-3, 7-5, 7-7. And then, took a huge step back in 03 at 2-10, 7-5, 7-5, 4-8. I wouldn't say he ever let the reins go. But again, we're talking about we're talking like pre-Hayden Iowa dumpster fire, like Northwestern of the Hayden era dumpster fire. That was Iowa. Yeah, you're right about Iowa State before Dan McCarney. I'm just saying you got to give McCarney some credit.
Oh, I'll give him a lot of credit. But if he took over the program in the same condition that Matt Campbell did, then Matt Campbell's doing a better job than Dan McCarney.
Sure. Yeah, he's doing a better job than Dan. I think it's the program. You got to remember, Paul Rhodes, as much as I don't love Paul Rhodes, Paul Rhodes at least had years as well where Iowa State was competitive. Matt Campbell took over a much more stable program than Dan McCarney did. I don't think there's much debate on that. Not saying that I'd rank McCarney ahead of Campbell. I'm just saying Campbell took over a much more stable program than McCarney.
Matt Campbell is 8 games over 500 in conference, and McCarney 41 games under 500.
Point proven.
All right, everyone. You love your football. We're Americans. We're crazy about it. But you know what? We love our country even more. The last couple of years have been tough, difficult. Economic difficulties have been especially hard the last year. So remember those families in need. You have an opportunity to do yourself a favor and do them a favor as well. We got to support each other. The fine folks at Jean Arthur Associates are doing their part. Now, when you partner with Jean Arthur Associates, you give back to those families in need. And more importantly, those children, they need it most. We got 23 families waiting for support, and they get it when you support and you connect with Jean Arthur Associates. So you go to www.jaainsurance.com. It's listed there in the description section of the live stream. You get the link right there. You get an instant quote on home, auto, motorcycle, boat, RV, renters insurance, business owner policies, commercial packages, workers' comp, inland marine equipment insurance, whatever that is, life, health, dental, crime, cyber bonds. It's all covered. Contact Jean Arthur Associates. Again, the link is in the description section of the video, and actually I'm going to drop it in the live chat. They do it all.
And Mark, you and I both know in these difficult financial times, if you don't have good insurance, That's you're setting yourself up for problems. But anything else we missed on the Iowa football front today, Mark?
Well, we missed this TV agreement, and the guy that I was talking about earlier, Tim, who jumped into the conversation a few times and was noted by Lemansky. He made a comment about the TV deal. So basically, the situation is that this is really seismic when you talk about this is not just TV contracts and where are you going to watch the game. This is about the way the sport is going to be covered, especially in this landscape of SEC versus Big Ten and this power struggle, because ESPN, for all of its ties to the SEC and really being lockstep partners with the SEC, let's face it, ESPN has had a contract with all the major conferences forever, going back to its early days covering college football, and by extension, ESPN/ABC. So even though it appears as though ESPN is right there in promoting the SEC more so than the other conferences, the Big Ten has always had a longstanding partnership with ESPN and the ABC networks. And so, for example, over the past 5 or 6 years, when Fox has had the bulk of the big games, and that's been the agreement with the Big Ten, ABC and ESPN still select the second most profitable Big Ten game of the year, the fourth most profitable, the sixth, meaning this year, Michigan, Ohio State goes to Fox, but then ABC, ESPN selects Notre Dame, Ohio State, because that is considered a Big Ten game, having been on the site of a Big Ten team. So now, by all reports, negotiations have broken down between ESPN/ABC and the Big Ten, and ESPN has turned down a 7-year, $380 million offer by the Big Ten. Therefore, for the first time, we were going to have no ESPN partnership with the Big Ten, which by extension to ABC, this has been a partnership on ABC television since 1966.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, because I know we don't have a ton of time here to discuss this, but am I correct in saying the games that will still, the Big Ten games that are likely to air on an ESPN network will likely end up being like ESPNU games, or maybe an ESPN2 game here or there, because they're going to have last dibs behind CBS, NBC, and Fox. And so there will be some games still on the Big Ten network, but they're not going to be attractive games.
You mean on ESPN?
Or excuse me, on ESPN.
They're not going to have a contract, period.
So I'll have to do more digging on this, because I thought I read earlier today that there would be some games that they would still get. Maybe I was looking at basketball.
Yeah.
So I'm curious too if this means, because again, I've not done enough research to have had time to do research on the reports that are out there today, but I'm assuming that either Paramount Plus or Peacock will also be involved here, because obviously CBS and Peacock are associated with Paramount and Peacock are associated with CBS and NBC.
I've only looked at one article, so that's all I can speak to, and those platforms were not listed, but Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren did cite that the streaming services are part of whatever deal was going to be signed.
I'm fine with Peacock. I stream it, Mark. I stream everything anyways. I know some people don't feel that way, but do you have cable dish? Do you stream? How do you watch games?
Cable.
So you've always been, so you're old fashioned.
I have looked into Hulu and YouTube TV, and it just becomes this myriad of trying to make comparisons, and I'm too lazy for that. So I just pay the cable bill.
Right. Well, I can say that I have no problem with that. And if you're the Big Ten, the gap is going to continue to widen between ESPN and the Big Ten. And no wonder Kevin Warren, made a point of making it clear that, ESPN should not own rights to the playoff. That's going to be interesting moving forward, because if that divide continues to grow between ESPN and everyone else, then what happens to the playoff? Because you could argue that the playoff then becomes somewhat, well, it's already biased, but the bias is only going to increase as you continue to have this divide widened. I would not think that there'd have to be some way to regulate who's on the committee, and both, you'd have to have almost I don't even know how you do that, though, because again, if ESPN owns exclusive rights to it as they currently do.
I'm just thinking also about the coverage of the sport, because even though, again, there is a perception that ESPN and the SEC, they are first and foremost partners, the money that ESPN has shelled out over its history up until this into this contract to the Big Ten is substantial. The Big Ten property has been extremely important to ESPN and ABC. And now, for the first time, ESPN will not be servicing a major conference, one of the two most powerful conferences. So ESPN always had an incentive to cover all the conferences because they showed all Power Five and really all conference games by any FBS conference. And now we're going to have a situation in which they broadcast no Big Ten games. For the first time in history, no Big Ten games. Therefore, you have to understand that ESPN is kind of the gold standard. And even though that's deteriorating based on Fox jumping into the game in the last 6-7 years, but also platforms like this and others that are taking away that conversation piece, that all the programming that surrounds the games, that ESPN is still the go-to with all the personalities and all the shows that they do. But now, without the Big Ten, you would think that would compromise ESPN's coverage of the Big Ten.
Absolutely. And I saw Steve Dace tweeted out earlier today that he just hopes the classic CBS jingle stays, the college football jingle. I hope it does too, because that's one of the. I've always hated the fact that the SEC has dominated CBS coverage, but I love the fact. I love the idea of more games being shown on NBC. Maybe we can get into this another day because I know we ran out of time, but I don't understand why NBC hasn't been more involved in college football over the past how many decades. I just don't get that.
Ever.
Well, they used to be more involved, correct? Have they ever not? Never? You're saying they never? They were involved in NBA and they stepped back from the NBA, but
bowl games. They used to show bowl games.
Okay.
But I've been watching college football since the late 70s, and NBC has never been involved in regular season college football outside of Notre Dame.
Well, now, again, and I saw somebody, D-Rock Irish, brought up in the chat that the Peacock experiment with Notre Dame, because they had 2 games last year. I don't know how those games did, and he didn't sound like D-Rock Irish knew how they did either. But I'd be interested to know that. And, you have what the NFL's doing with Thursday Night Football and Amazon. That is the way of the future. I have no problem with it. I've been streaming for years now, and it's all the same to me. But I do wonder, from a strategic standpoint, if it's in the end a good move for exposure, because I mean, the NBC brand is what it is. It's, as you just brought up, it's been Notre Dame exclusively for years. So you just wonder if you're throwing a bunch of games on, or a number of games on NBC per year. I almost wonder if that, I don't know. It's going to be, these are just preliminary reports. We don't have any solid information yet. But it is fascinating.
It seems to be pretty solid. It's reported right on ESPN.
Is it on ESPN now?
That ESPN has rejected the Big Ten's final offer of a 7-year, $380 million agreement. So it's not as though the ESPN said, we're now an SEC network, we don't want to deal with the Big Ten, or the Big Ten said, we're strictly Fox, we don't want to be on ESPN. They would like to partner, but since the Big Ten is so closely in line with, in addition to Fox, now CBS and NBC, it's obvious that the brand or the value of the games that would have been delivered to ESPN did not meet ESPN standards. And that's what it says right here. The lower tier games, ESPN was not, of course, wanting to pay that kind of money for Maryland and Minnesota on a weekly basis, I guess.
And does NBC's now involvement with Big Ten coverage, does that in any way change your opinion on the future of Notre Dame in the Big Ten?
Well, we just discussed this on the USC show, and I haven't given it thought, but Matt Zemek certainly believes that it protects Notre Dame.
It protects Notre Dame.
It protects their so right now. I know that even when Notre Dame is playing a marquee game, that they tend to be an afterthought for me, just because my traffic's on ESPN and Fox during the day, and I don't think, oh, that game's on NBC
or CBS
or CBS. Yeah, absolutely. But I'll often see that Notre Dame's in the second quarter against, not a huge game, but even against USC at times, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's right. They're on NBC. They're not, NBC's not part of the normal flow of college football traffic on a Saturday, but with the Big Ten and Notre Dame on NBC, then NBC, I've got to think that they'll not just be showing these isolated football games. They'll make it a football day on NBC.
And so I don't know what does this mean for the Big Ten network? Less games, I guess.
Yeah, I got to think it means less games. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that'll be interesting to see how the Big Ten network approaches, because the Big Ten network is the Big Ten. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they approach coverage on Saturdays.
Unless there's further expansion, and if you've got a 18 or 20 team Big Ten, then there's going to be plenty of games.
Fascinating, yeah.
Yep.
Fair point.
All right, folks, we appreciate y'all being here. And again, we would love this show to be even bigger and better. Please bring a friend next week at Tuesday, 4:30 Central Time. And again, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Gene Arthur Associates. We left the link in the live chat, but it's also down in the description section of the live stream, as this is brought to you by Gene Arthur Associates. Catch Corey's work on From the Hawkeye of the Storm, of course. And we will be back here next Tuesday. Corey, have a great week.
Appreciate it, Mark. We'll talk next week.